So welcome all of you. So it's a great pleasure that we can be here. So don't worry that not too much people, but I think we will discuss between us, and we have a distinguished guest from Poland and of course from India, from Brussels, and from Turkey. So our topic is emerging markets and EU. So like yesterday we discussed about the EU and we discussed a lot about weakness of European Union. Maybe emerging markets will be opportunity for us, but we must know how we can use these opportunities. So our topic is focus on emerging markets. So definitely you know that we don't have one definition. What does it mean emerging markets? So we'll have different presentation. We'll have 5 presentations, and I think that we will feel that it's very difficult to say what does it mean emerging markets. Of course, at the beginning you think China, India, Brazil, South Africa, so-called BRICS countries. But to be honest, if we look at the economic growth, we can indicate a lot of emerging markets in Latin America, in Sub-Saharan Africa, and in Asia, especially in Southeast Asia. So we have, like I said, 5 presentations. I think the most important for us is discussion between panelists, between guests. So I will take care, and I think 10 minutes it will be enough for presentation. So please give only the most important points, and later we'll have more time to discuss. So please, all panelists, to give the most important points, and please, your presentation will have about 10 minutes, 8-10 minutes, and later we'll have about 20-25 minutes for discussion. So the first speech, it will be prepared by my colleagues from Warsaw School of Economics, by Mrs. Agnieszka Płos, and the first speech will have some kind of introduction. My colleagues, she's economist, and this speech, it will be focused on data. So she show you some different kind of statistics and data, and it will be some kind of introduction, more general. What does it mean emerging markets in statistical data? And later the next speaker, it will be Professor Bogdan Guralczyk. He's well-known person. He's former ambassador in Asia countries, and also he's lecturer at Warsaw University, and he's expert in foreign ministry and in a lot of institutions. The next speaker, it will be Professor Shantanu Chakrabarti. He's from Calcutta University, and I hope he will give lecture about the Modi time. So we have now a new Prime Minister in India, and I hope he'll give a speech about successful or not successful of Modi idea. And the next speaker, it will be Sergei Quatara from Brussels, and he will present us the issue of Sub-Saharan Africa. Of course, if we think about Sub-Saharan Africa, we think poverty, but it is not only poverty. Of course, we have poverty, but in another hand, we have a lot of possibilities. And I hope Sergei will deliver us some kind of opportunities for Poland and for the European Union. And the last person, it will be Mehmet. He's from Istanbul, but to be honest, now he studied at Warsaw, and he's PhD candidate in Faculty of Management, and he will give speech about the Turkey and possibilities, opportunities for Poland, for the EU in the context of economic growth. So let's start. Agnieszka, please, I think 10 minutes it will be enough. So yes. I will take care and I will cut time.
Okay.
So let's start.
Preliminary statistics indicate that global growth in the second half of 2000...
Maybe you will use microphone or...
that global growth in the second half of 2014 was broadly in line with the October 2014 projections. Although activity was broadly in line with the forecast, investment growth in China declined in the second half of 2014, reflecting a correction in the real estate sector, and high frequency indicators point to some further slowdown. Growth in Latin America in the second half of 2014 was slight, reflecting weak activity in Brazil, lower than expected growth in Mexico, and weakening momentum in other economies in the region. Economic performance in Russia was a bit stronger than expected in the second half of 2014, but the increase in geopolitical tensions, declining confidence, and the repercussions of the oil price decline point to a more severe weakening of the outlook in the Commonwealth of Independent States as a whole at the start of the year. Headline inflation has declined in advanced economies, reflecting the decline in oil prices, softer prices for other commodities, and the weakening of demand in a number of countries already experiencing below target inflation, such as Euro area and Japan. With regard to emerging markets, lower prices for oil and other commodities have generally contributed to reduction in inflation, with the notable exception of countries suffering sizable exchange rate depreciation, such as Russia. The weaker than expected growth for emerging markets, coming on the heels of sequential negative growth surprises for the past 4 years, has led to diminished expectation for their medium-term growth prospects. In retrospect, the strong economic performance in emerging markets in the immediate post-crisis period partly reflected high growth in China, particularly in investment, which contributed importantly to the strength in commodity prices as well as easing of global financial conditions. Oil prices have declined by about 45% since September, owing to a variety of factors. Weaker than expected global activity, weaker demand for oil and greater supply. Unexpected demand weakness in some major economies, in particular emerging market economies, has clearly played a role. However, a sharper decline in oil prices relative to other commodities suggests that factors specific to the oil market, as opposed to global aggregate demand, are also at work. These include greater than expected oil supply, as well as some weakness in oil demand driven by improvements in energy efficiency. Declines in prices of other commodities, such as industrial metals, also suggest some weakening in demand. With declining bond yields and easier financial conditions in advanced economies, monetary policy conditions have also eased in several emerging market oil importers, which have reduced policy rates as lower oil prices and slowing demand pressures have reduced inflation rates. In contrast, policy rates have been raised sharply in Russia, which is facing pressure on the ruble, and monetary policy has been tightened in Brazil as well. On average, fiscal deficits continue to increase for emerging market and middle-income economies, largely driven by revenue losses of oil exporters. New bouts of financial market volatility, capital outflows, and exchange rate depreciation have also affected the fiscal position of some of these economies. With sharply lower oil prices, most oil exporters are projected to record sizable deficits in 2015. Algeria, Angola, Azerbaijan, Libya, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. Some countries have begun to implement fiscal tightening, while others are accommodating the shock through higher deficits and exchange rate depreciation. Real policy rates have, on average, remained close to their January 2014 levels and below pre-crisis levels in many emerging market economies. Bank credit growth has continued to slow, although it remains rapid in some economies. Economy-wide leverage, as measured by the ratio of bank credit to GDP, has therefore continued to increase. Growth in China is expected to decline to 6.8% this year and 6.3% in 2016.
I think it will be all the time the same.
Okay.
Professor Grant.
Yes. These projections have been revised downward by 1/4 and 1/2 percentage point, respectively, as previous excesses in real estate credit and investment continue to unwind. The Chinese authorities are now expected to put greater weight on reducing vulnerabilities from recent rapid credit and investment growth, and hence the forecast assumes less of a policy response to the underlying moderation. Ongoing implementation of structural reform and lower oil and commodity prices are expected to demand consumer-oriented activities, partly buffering the slowdown. Elsewhere in emerging and developing Asia, India's growth is expected to strengthen from 7.2% last year to 7.5% this year and next. Growth will benefit from recent policy reforms, a consequent pickup in investment and lower oil prices. Growth in Latin America and the Caribbean declined for the fourth consecutive year, 1.3% last year. With no apparent impulse for a near-term pickup in activity, lower commodity prices, and reduced policy space in many economies, regional growth is projected at 0.9% this year, before recovering to 2% in 2016. Brazil's economy is projected to contract by 1% this year, more than 2 percentage points below the October 2014 forecast. Mexico's projected growth of 3% this year in a 1.5 percentage point downward revision. The IMF staff global projections model suggests a decrease in the probability of a recession in many major economies and regions over a 4-quarter horizon compared with the October 2014. The decrease largely reflects stronger growth starting points. The probability of a recession has, however, increased for Latin America and the rest of the world. Deflation risks are primarily a concern for the euro area, where the probabilities are still high despite some decline. In other economies and regions, they are well below 10%. And thank you.
So thanks a lot, Agnieszka. So it was a very good speech, because you have some general information about what's happened now in emerging markets and what is the most important issue. I talked before. It is no one definition. What does it mean emerging markets? So please remember, and if we have some lecture with students, me or Professor Guralczyk, we always underline. In one side is a huge, big market if we talk about emerging markets. So if you look at economic growth, it's quite impressive. So please remember, in Eurozone it is about 1%. Here 7-8%. So in one side is a huge market with a huge economic growth. But also please remember, if we talk about emerging markets, it's a lot of challenges, like in China, like in Latin America countries, or in sub-Saharan countries. So thanks a lot for your introduction, and now I invite Professor Bogdan Góralczyk, who give us speech about China, and I think he'll give us a good speech about a huge market, but with a lot of problems. And I think
Polish president in advance said he will no. Be careful.
Okay, so I invite Professor Góralczyk. So your floor.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you have 12 minutes because Agnieszka speech was only 8 minutes, so we have 12 minutes, Professor.
Okay, do you hear me well? Good morning. Well, as you see, I didn't prepare my PowerPoint presentation. I still do believe in power of my arguments. Second introductory remark, I didn't participate, sorry to say so, yesterday, but I heard that there was a lot of problems dealing with the European Union, that it's getting weaker and so many problems to resolve. Well, actually I'm preparing in English a volume to be published later this year, and the title says it all, The European Union on the Global Scene, and subtitle, United or Indifferent. Indifferent, so it means we are on the verge and we have a lot of problems in front of us. However, my task today, as given by organizers, is to present China as an the most important emerging market. I see in front of me dear friend Shantanu. India will never accept what I will say here about China, so definitely we will have a discussion here. However, I need to tell you that what I will present right now is China last half year, which is something which is unknown, because we have a kind of a juggernaut, which is still unreceived properly in the Western world and outside world. First point, China today and China 2 or 3 decades ago is not only a different world, it's another planet. China, until recently, she described herself as the biggest emerging market, the biggest developing country in the world. Not true. It's not valid anymore. They are the second economy on the globe. Mm-hmm. They have the largest foreign currency reserves, which is 4.5 trillion US dollars. 4.5 trillion. This is the only country in the world which has a hot potato in the hands. They need to throw all these billions in the world around because, well, still it is in US dollars, denominated mostly in US dollars, and Chinese currency, renminbi, is still not a global one. And what could happen if, for instance, this black man in the White House will announce that the dollar is inflated 50%? Instead 4.5, they will have 2 plus something in the foreign currency reserves. So China has started to spend the money. Second point, most of us realize that China is part of the BRICS, but what we don't realize that, like it or not, China alone is bigger than the 4 others combined in the term of economy, in the term of GDP, in the term of trade volume as well. Next dimension which is raising, it's not only BRICS, it's Shanghai Cooperation Organization. India will join this year as a full-fledged member. And please remember that Shanghai Cooperation Organization is the first ever organization organized after the Second World War without any participation of any Western powers. So it is a challenge for us again. And finally, I would like to raise another term, CICA, don't mix it with CIA, which is a Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building Measures in Asia, because in my opinion this is a third institution and third organization which is preparing a challenge for the outside world. That during the last summit meeting of this CICA in Shanghai last May, President Xi Jinping, President of China, has declared that Asians should build a security system without any involvement of the Western powers. Again. So we have a new chapter as well in this respect. Now, we have a very peculiar situation domestically in China because we have a very strong leadership, like in India. I wrote recently an article, Modistan. So everything belongs to Prime Minister Modi. And the same story is with China, where the president, who is also Secretary General of the party, and his supervisor is the most important man for the military sector in China, Xi Jinping, he changed the strategy of the country, and in double terms. For the first, he changed the domestic strategy of the country, and this is the reason which explains why China is not raising double-digit, 10 or more % per year. China will grow maybe 6, maybe 7% maximum, because the most important day, he has announced 2 centenary goals. Centenary for 100 years of the ruling Communist Party of China, which is July the 1st, 2021. The first one is Xiao Kang She, which means in our terms is middle class. Actually, it is the term that they need to bring about a new class of consumers and a middle class, because the previous model of development already rejected. It was mainly focused on the export. China was exporting everything as the global workshop. And now China wants to focus on the domestic consumption. And first, you need to produce domestic consumers. And that's the challenge. That they spend a lot on it. And this is a totally different subject, but I need to put it as a title. Second, they also changed this foreign policy or foreign strategy. The previous one of Deng Xiaoping, the visionary, was called in Chinese Tao Guang Yang Hui. Keep low profile, don't pretend to be a leader, gather your strength, and wait for a proper moment. And the proper moment, it seems, has come. And Xi Jinping last November, actually the last day of November last year, has pronounced and announced a new foreign strategy of China. And the most important inside of it, once again, this is just a touch, but I go deeper inside. But the most important are 2. They say, Itai Ilu, one belt, one road, which means new, very famous in ancient times, Silk Road, which is a land connection from China through Central Asia towards Europe. And the second, even more intriguing, is 21st century maritime Silk Road, which means that China wants to be a maritime power, not only a land power as it used to be in the history. And now, if you mix it together, you will have stunning situation. When Xi Jinping last September, actually Prime Minister Modi is exported to China right now. He is during the final official visit in China, 3 days long, as I understand. When Xi Jinping was recently in September last year in India, they signed agreements for $20 billion for modernization of the Hindu infrastructure. When Xi Jinping a month ago went to Pakistan, they signed $28 billion agreements, and altogether combined it will be 46, because they want to connect a harbor city of in Pakistan with the province of Xinjiang, another Silk Road, which is a direct challenge to the India interests, to Iran, even to Russia. So we have completely new situation. And look, just a few days ago, last week, President Xi Jinping, media coverage, he was attending, the main guest actually, and the main guest, the parade in the Kremlin, in front of the Kremlin, on the 70th anniversary of the finalizing the Second World War. But he was on a tour. He was in Kazakhstan, first stop, in Astana. He was in Russia for 1 day and a half, signed agreements for $20 billion once again. And recently he spent 3 days and a half in Belarus, on the outskirts of the Polish harbor. We have Chinese 170 kilometers from here. And they signed another 7 million, and the Chinese experts say that Chinese investment in Belarus is already more than $15 billion. So this is completely new situation. It is not low profile, but Chinese activities, Chinese involvement, Chinese in not sending T-shirts or the shoes or all kind of shit, if I may say so, spreading around the globe. They are coming to us with the banks, with the investments. They are ready for fusions and new gatherings, and this is completely new chapter for all the partners of China, including Poland, including the European Union. Now, due to the fact that my time is limited, we have two answers as far as for now, and those are half answers from the outside world. One is called TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, and recently, due to the Chinese challenge, or even if some people say, of course, Chinese threat, we had Shinzo Abe, Prime Minister of Japan, in Washington, D.C. They rejuvenated the military alliance between Japan, and what more, Obama, as the first president of the U.S. after the Second World War, covered security coverage for the Senkaku Islands, which is a territory disputed between Japan and China. So we have also a new chapter. And the second issue discussed, the first one was, of course, was China. The second was TPP. And according to them, I was listening carefully to the press conference of both of them, and they announced that late May, early June, there will be a summit meeting, and finally, even Japan will join, because Japan is closed society, closed market in relative terms, and they want to open it for the American companies. So we will have a ceremony in 2 or 3 weeks' time, and TPP will be officially raised. The other answer is, of course, TTIP, Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, initiated as a dialogue and debate in June 2013. I'm not a very big optimist. I'm in favor. I think it is the proper time to rejuvenate the transatlantic relationship between US and the EU. However, we have more and more dispute on domestic scene in both France and Germany, and probably we will not finalize it. There was a first threshold, the end of 2014. We didn't manage. Probably now we still don't manage until the end of this year, and later this year we have the elections in America. So to finalize, because my time has come to the end, and I'm always observing the timing, I have this kind of proposal. Blame me for this, what I'm saying right now. So don't search for the culprits anywhere. Blame me. America, United States of America, is not ready institutionally, strategically, politically, in all aspects, including mentally, to be number 2. If you go to America now and tell them that you are number 2, they will use the opportunity and the human rights, freedom, and they shoot you with the rifle or the gun. Because America is absolutely not ready to be number 2. The problem is the main challenger, which I was trying to describe, China, is also politically, institutionally, mentally not ready to be number 1. So we have a kind of the power vacuum, which is a dangerous moment in the history, and Mother Nature doesn't know vacuum. This is not a vacuum cleaner. So somebody will come and will play a role. Who will be that? This is a real something for the discussion. And now look, no words on the European Union, because in front of them, European Union is on the outskirts of the mainstream. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor, for your great speech, and I hope that we have time, and Professor put a lot of very interesting points, and I hope that we have time to discuss. And like Professor said, China activity is sophisticated. China leadership also is very, very sophisticated, and China leadership is changing. Also, in India case, we have a new Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, so I hope that our colleagues from India will introduce us this person. Maybe he's not well-known person in Europe, but he's very, very interesting in Asia, and he will become a new leader definitely in Asia. So I invite Professor Shantanu. It's our friends from Calcutta. Will cooperate with Calcutta University, and so Shantanu, the floor is yours. 11 minutes. I must think about time. Okay. So
well, thank you very much. Let me first begin by thanking the organizers for inviting me, giving me a chance to share some of my thoughts. It's a bit daunting because by profession I'm not a professional economist like most of you here. So what I thought of doing here is to share certain basic thoughts about India-European Union engagement, particularly in recent times, since it's almost 1 year that we have a new government in power. Theoretically speaking, if you look at it, relations with European Union and India should have been most cordial. Both try to project a multilateral global order. Both prefer the democratic setup of governance. India is a part of the community of democracies, for instance. Over the time, there is a process in which European Union and Indian relations have been institutionalized. I mean, you have continuing relationship, then establishment of a strategic partnership in 2004. You have had summit meetings, though not quite as regular. But real problem seems to be, as one Indian analyst points out, that there seems to be an information deficit in India regarding Europe. Probably this has something to do with our own colonial past, when our focus is more oriented towards certain specific countries of Western Europe. Just to give you one recent example, very recently a Bollywood movie has been almost entirely shot in Poland. And if you look at it, it's a sort of thriller. The main hero is jumping off from bridges, etc. in central Warsaw. You can also spot the red and yellow buses, but that city is being projected as London, not Warsaw. It's a sort of project, and if you look at our foreign office, till today, you do not have a separate department dealing with European Union. Europe, within the Indian Foreign Ministry, is still essentially divided between Russia and Central Europe, and dealing with countries of Western Europe, with, of course, there being a separate department dealing with UK because of the colonial past.
Which is a good prediction for the future.
Yeah, and Central Europe consists of 29, yes? 29 countries.
Second problem is that, to bring in the China question, how can I not do that with the professor bringing up the question of China along with India? If you look at our foreign ministry, it's, it faces a manpower crisis in the sense, unlike that in China. It's because of a strange old colonial-style recruitment system of our bureaucrats, in which they have to sit every year for a single examination, out of which foreign service official come. Usually 15 number is between 15 to 20 people per year. And if you look at the total number of Indian embassies and consulates and consider the total number of Indian bureaucrats within the foreign ministry, the average number per consulate and bureaucracy wouldn't be more than 3.5 to 4. Just to, I think as per a rough estimate, the total number of Indian bureaucrats are almost similar to that of a smaller country like Singapore. So, it becomes very clear if you go visit the Indian embassy in Brussels and if you visit the Chinese embassy in Brussels. Now, this has all led to a sort of to various sorts of frictions in relations, which again enters into crisis point because of certain factors. Certain recent factors which incidents which have created frictions between India and European Union. I could mention some. Of course, there is a feeling within Indian side that socioeconomic ills in India often get an overtly negative portrayal in European media. But more particular issues which have created frictions, for instance, the European Union decision to extend the EU emissions standard in case of greenhouse gases in the aviation sector, which has caused, which had led to imposition of fine on Indian Jet Airways, which runs a service from Brussels. It has created problems between European Union bureaucrats and India. The second recent problem which I can think of is, of course, the case of detention of two Italian Marines who were accused of shooting two Indian fishermen in Indian waters. There is a long trial which has been going on, and in January this year, the European Parliament passed a resolution asking the Indian government for allowing the Italian Marines to return back to Italy, which India did not take very kindly. The Indian position is the matter is under sub judice, and the Indian government is not in a position really to do anything. And there are analysts in India who argue that when Modi visited Europe, there were initially plans to hold a summit meeting in Brussels, which however got cancelled because of these issues. Now, this is all very unfortunate because this precisely happens to be a juncture when Europe seems to be increasingly looking outside its old Atlantic networks. Professor mentioned the case of China. I will here mention two cases. One, the reluctance being shown by European Union to impose stricter sanctions on Russia in spite of United States pressure. It might be because of their own internal dependence on Russian gas and energy supply. But more importantly, the case of this new institution which has come up, the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank, sponsored by China. And in spite of early US pressures, you have important European Union members like, for instance, UK, France, Italy, as well as Germany, which have decided to become members of this. So much so that even United States had retraced back its position. And now Obama says that he was all along for such an organization. Given this chance, what are the options of India really managing to develop further its relations with European Union? I mean, two areas where it could develop, of course, is trade. As you know, there has been on the anvil this scheme of establishing a broad-based trade and investment agreement between India and Europe. You have had several negotiations, several rounds of negotiations going on, but somewhere it got stuck around 2013 over the differences on the substantial gaps on crucial issues, including data security status for the IT sector. Now, the present government, after coming to power, has decided to restart negotiations. Modi, his focus continues to be Asia-specific, but he is not he is not ignoring Europe, because his essential policy is to for long, if you look at the trajectory of Indian economy, it has since late 1980s and early 1990s, the focus has been more on the service sector and the IT sector. But there is a feeling within the Indian establishment that re-kicking back of the infrastructure development as well as the manufacturing sector is required, and that would require a massive level of investment. That is why you find Modi touring all across Asia in particular, but he has been to Europe also, particularly in France and Germany. In Germany, he launched this huge trade fair, and one of my colleagues took pictures that it's being projected in a huge way, the Make in India campaign. I mean, very recently, one of my colleagues took a picture of this advertisement pasted on a bus in Zurich. From submarines to satellites, make everything in India. The second area, of course, in which Modi is interested would be diversifying India's defense purchase. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the Rafale deal has been signed with France. There are Indian defense analysts, many of them, who have been very much against this deal. They think it's a non-starter. Dependence on Soviet supplies would have been much better. This is more expensive. This essentially, saved the French company from collapsing, and we are not sure of ultimate delivery. I mean, perhaps we wouldn't get our first aircrafts before 2017 and 18. So many of the defense analysts have pointed out that this is suicidal. Just 1 minute. But that the reason Modi decided to go for it because he wanted to diversify, and a greater engagement of European Union continues to be a part of this process of diversification. So we hope to see greater engagement between India and European Union, particularly with the German Chancellor due to visit India in October this year. And hopefully, if a final deal on this free trade agreement is clinched by that time, you will see greater engagement between the two middle powers in the global order. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So thanks a lot, Professor, and sorry that I must cut the time, but I hope that we have quite interesting discussion. So like Shantanu said, since 2007 we have discussion with India about the partnership agreement, but of course we still have a long way to finish this and to sign this agreement. But like you said, we have a lot of opportunities. But unfortunately, like Professor Guralczyk said, and you mentioned, we are not European Union. You mentioned about UK, France, Germany. So similar is in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa. Since 2007, we have a strategic partnership. We have a lot of meetings between EU and Africa. So if you look at institutional framework, we are quite good partners. But the question is about the implementation. And the next speaker is my colleagues from Brussels, is Sergey, who give you a speech about sub-Saharan Africa and opportunities for the EU. So the floor is yours. And of course 10-11 minutes.
Okay, good, thank you. We can have this. So good morning, and first of all, thank you for organizing inviting us to take part to these important discussions regarding emerging markets, and we will be pleased to share our views and expertise regarding Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. My name is Sergey Ouattara. I'm the chairman of the EU-Africa Chamber of Commerce. We are based in Brussels and working with the different partners in Africa and then in Europe as well. So let me first start a few minutes by presenting our chamber, and then after I will make a focus on the topic of today. So basically we are based in Brussels, as I mentioned. We work with African diaspora professionals and also with actors in Africa. So far we have around 3,000 actors in our network, chambers of commerce, institutions, private sector, and so on. We work also with policy makers. Basically, our mission is divided in three parts. First of all, advocacy in front of EU policymaker, advocacy in front of African policymaker, and of course, as the Chamber of Commerce, business services to serve European and African private sector actors. The direction we take to achieve the mission is divided in four pillars. First of all, high-level conferences and workshops we organize in order to facilitate meetings between policymakers and then private sector actors. The second point is networking and business services. Of course, to do business, we need to have meeting opportunities, so we also facilitate this. We focus on information and communication, share information between the two groups of people in EU and in Africa in order, of course, to facilitate business and improve policy making decisions. And then we have some different programs we are running, such as corporate social responsibility, entrepreneurship, and so on. So we provide different services. As I mentioned, we facilitate a meeting between those different stakeholders. We take part to a discussion within EU policymakers and African policymakers to provide input from the private sector, from Africa and then from Europe as well. We have also a global investment network, so that means project holder that can be public actors, governments or private actors can benefit from our network in order to find investor and the other way around, and other various services. I would like to make a focus on this program, Corporate Social Responsibility in Africa, which has been launched in 2014, and then we have received the support from the European Commission for that. Actually, the idea behind is to reward responsible business actors in Africa. So the last edition, we had those 5 companies winning the awards, and the next edition ceremony is planned in December. It will be decided either in London or Luxembourg. We have also another important topic we are working on is actually business centers. We have discussed about some issues. I will mention some issues, how to do business in Africa, and basically the idea is have business center where we provide various services, but as well we have our investment platform connected to that, and where various actors and academic actors also can get information on business between EU and Africa. Let's now make a focus on the topic of today. Allow me to make some comments on emerging markets and remind some common understanding of what is an emerging market. These are five characteristics we have identified for emerging markets. First of all, low per capita income, rapid growth on those markets, high volatility. We can mention natural disaster and impacts on prices, external prices. We have political instability. Capital markets are not very mature, and then last we have high average return for investor, of course. Those are export-driven strategy, and of course we have low cost for goods and commodities. What makes emerging markets attractive? So we have identified 3 different points. First of all is that they are new market with increasing middle class, especially when talking about Africa. We have diaspora going back to their countries, becoming political leaders and business leaders, and then we have these middle class for which there is no services available. So we have differences, very poor and very rich, but this middle class is missing and means business opportunities. We have, second point, low wages and high quality labor. This is an opportunity, especially in Africa. We have spoken a lot about China, about Asia, but now things are moving on also in Africa, and then investors and companies are understanding that there is an opportunity in Africa to have low wages, but also high qualified actor and labor force. That is sourcing. Now with the pressure on the international market, it's important to have efficient operations to lower costs, and then we have global value chain. So again here there are good opportunities in Africa to outsource for companies. So some advices from our side. But before that, I will mention something which is not in the presentation, but some opportunities we mentioned in the beginning regarding Africa. What are the opportunities in Africa? There is a lot of opportunity, but to make a focus on some of them, we have manufacturing industry. There's a lot of things to do. Africa has been mainly exporting raw materials. So there is a ground for producing locally, manufacturing, having products with international quality standards, and then put them on international market. Another point is services. A lot of needs in terms of services. You are in different countries, you need to rent a house, you don't know where to go, you need to have entertainment, nowhere. Those basic services available in Europe are not available in Africa, especially as I mentioned for middle class. So there are opportunities. Let's speak about financial opportunities. Interest rates provided by banks, 15, 20, sometimes 30% interest rate. So there is a real opportunity for financial actors to provide their services there. We have need for capacity building. Need to raise capacity of different actors, and business leaders are demanding. They are looking for capacity building in order to face the challenges they have on international markets. Now Africa cannot be seen as a market aside the global markets. Those companies need to be resilient to different financial economic crises. So they need to be aware, they need to be trained, they need to benefit from experience from other countries. So these are some of the opportunities that I can mention in Africa. In terms of country, we have in Africa different countries that have been identified as interesting countries where doing business. In Central Africa, we can talk about Rwanda. In West Africa, we have Ghana, we have Cote d'Ivoire also, which is now raising after the political crisis. In Eastern Africa, we have Kenya, we have Ethiopia as well. So there are some different countries where it's possible to focus on and doing business. So some advice from our side, from our perspective, and from the experience from our network. First of all, is doing business in Africa actually needs to understand how business actors are operating in Africa. What is the business culture? So if you come with the European mindset and try to do as you are doing in Europe, it will be difficult. For example, several companies don't have websites. They don't have information published on what they are doing, but they are doing business. They have a lot of money, they have partners, they have experience, but this is not published. So this is something we are working on to help them communicate about what they are doing. This information is important for European, but if the information is not published, that does not mean that the information does not exist. So for example, for a European business actor, it's important to go there, to have access to that information and to understand that his African counterpart, even if he has not a website, he is trustful and there is business opportunity behind. So important to make connection and partnerships with local actors to understand local business culture. Second point is government. There's a lot of complaints regarding corruption and so on. Yes, this issue is real, is something that is true in Africa, but not in different countries. So it's important also to understand the challenges that government have. They have challenges and they need to face it. It's not that we are supporting corruption, but you need to understand how things work and what are the mechanisms behind in order to have support for your business activities. Another point is risk. Investing in Africa means you are not risk averse. You are a risk taker. So if you wait until everything is under control and everything is safe in Africa, you will never invest in Africa. And what actors are doing actually, you need to face the risk. You need to know what are the risks. Yes, I have 30 seconds. So you need to face the risk and you need to know how you can do it in Africa. So maybe I can give more detail during the discussion phase. And the last point is strategy. You invest in Africa, you need to have flexible strategy. You need to be ready. What happened to your business if there is a political change? This you need to take into account in the beginning. So when issues happen, when problems happen, you know how to react. So I will just stop there. Thank you for your attention, and I remain available for any question you can have. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, so thanks a lot, Sergey. And the last, our guest is from Turkey, and the Turkey is becoming more and more important player, not only in political dimension, but mostly because of economic. And also, like in India, like in China, we have a very strong person, very strong man, who is now the president of Turkey, and also he will be one of the leaders of emerging markets. So I invite our guest from Istanbul, but now he's in Poland, and I hope you finish your PhD in successful, but now you must say something about Turkey. So the floor is yours. So 10 minutes, and later we'll have 15 minutes for discussion, and later we'll have lunch. So please say 10 minutes.
Who will be lunch?
Okay.
So maybe we will have some turkey. So, hello everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me here and attending this conference. And I will talk about Turkey and EU relations, and which actually, while discussing the emerging markets, that's Turkey in EU, having a big amount of the poverty regarding the growth economies and also the politically. And as Turkey, we can see, I will give you the numbers, and I will talk with the numbers. Therefore, we will have and understand how actually Turkey is standing in Europe or in Asia. We can consider when the fact we are talking actually, that's maybe all of you will know about this, that Turkey has got 77 million population, while actually EU over 500 million population. That's Turkey is geopolitically actually is as a bridge in between the West and the East. Therefore, actually, I will give some numbers about Turkey population. I'm talking about the population because yesterday Professor Bledowski was telling us, giving a speech, old people
as the EU is the problem.
Yes. With the population.
We don't have problem with population.
Well, right. And here I will give about the population. Turkey with the 77 million has got the 17th biggest population in the world. So, and also having 0 to 14 age, Turkey has got 24%, and 15 to 24 age, Turkey has got 16% of the total population in Turkey. We can consider actually 40% in total young population. So this young population could be seen for the Europe as an advantage. For actually the professor talks yesterday as an important asset. We can see this for Europe's old age. Turkey could be a candidate for giving a young breed for the Europe. And also Turkey is geopolitically actually located between the continents of Asia, Europe, and also considered Africa. That's why we call Turkey Eurasia. Therefore, also Turkey has got the largest GDP in world's 15th largest GDP with $1.300 billion of PPP. So, and Turkey had got actually 2011 in the first quarter 11% growth. Also, of course, now in 2014 we have 3%, 3.5% growth in the economy, but that's young population and putting them in the labor sector, which makes Turkey actually getting growth in the growth economies. Also, in 2014, Turkey had got the 157 billion export. That gives Turkey in a position to have the world's being a leader in the world's economies. Well, when we consider actually and compare Turkey having this big amount of population, makes Turkey actually 16% of the total population of Europe, where they live only in Turkey. And also those countries of European Union members, Cyprus, Denmark, Hungary, Lithuania, 15 of them, it's actually one Turkey, we can say, happening by the population. Well, also, it's not only the having the population and the economically. Also, Turkey, if, as we know, is a candidate, Turkey, and the associate member since 1963. With the European Economic Community. And therefore, this is the votes of the Parliament of EU. And you will see actually if Turkey will be as a member in EU, then you will see that Turkey will be the second country which will be having the power in the parliament to making a policymaker. So nowadays we have the Germany with 96 seats, and then France comes to 74 seats, and then continue England and Italy, and of course we have the Poland, and then the Spain coming after it. Well, I could say actually Turkey-EU relations like marriage, but engaged and still having the problems between each other, because since 1963
engagement.
Indeed, that's why I give you the name long-term relationship what we have between European Union and Turkey. Absolutely. So the most important was actually with Ankara Agreement 1963 with the European Economic Community, then finalize it in 1995 with the Custom Union Agreements, Turkey, which is a very important point, and 2005 Turkey got the entrance to EU as a candidate member for the European Union. And actually, when we talk about Turkey, we will see after 1980s, because before 1980s Turkey had got a closed economy, while actually 1947 Turkey had got IMF and World Bank memberships, and then 1962 associated member for the EU, and 53 years still we are in touch and engaged with European Union, and 35 years we can say integration with the world economies. That's 1980s free market economy accepted in Turkey. Then 1989 circulation of the capital became free, and 1996 the custom union. And Turkey is one of the countries has the custom union, although it's not a member of the European Union. Andorra and San Antonio, actually one of those countries is too. And 2005 we start negotiations, the access, and already we finished just one, but we're supposed to finish it soon with all the accessions procedures. So when we look at trades actually about and talk about Turkey, that we will see since Turkey established from 1923, coming 2010, in the chart you will see that export and imports, how it's growing up repeatedly. And in 2014 we have got $157 billion of the export, and also $242 billion the import. There we should be careful about the deficit, although we say always Turkey is a growing market, emerging market, but we have a big amount of the deficit in the trade ranks. And when we looked at actually EU and Turkey relations is not only politically and is not only with the cultural relations, also we have the economically. That's Turkey is the EU is the first trade maker and business partnership of EU, and EU is the seventh partnership actually. That you see here the chart, we have almost $150 billion trade in between us. And recently on Wednesday, Turkey had got an agreement for the custom unions to make it much larger, because custom union is not agreed with the agriculture and the public sector and some services. But after all, they tried to make the wider the agreement. And here that's we have, as you can see, from 2005 to 2014, with European Union and trade with Turkey is always growing repeatedly, and you can see that already we came. But this shows us it's the benefit for EU, not exactly for Turkey when we look to marks. But most probably after this Wednesday agreement we had this week, that it might be positively changed, good for Turkey as well. And here again, in the graphic, you will see the trades. That's what we have in goods. Trades in goods is 2012 and 13 and 14. It's over actually 80 billions of EU exports is coming to Turkey, and then it's imports. Of course, that's Turkey having the much more from the EU. The balance, what we could see, that is always is negatively showing for Turkey, but as I mentioned, after this Wednesday agreement, it's possibly good for Turkey as well. And the EU is Turkey's #1 import and export partner, while actually Turkey ranks in the 7th for EU. So in the import, and the 5th for the export market is important for EU, Turkey. Therefore, is 43% of economy, actually Turkish economies, and the export and import trade is going to be done with the European Union. That's with the marks. And the most important, actually, our professor also told us TTP agreement. So Turkey also trying to get in this TTIP agreement, and they want to make, because you can see Spain, France, Germany, they are taking, and England, all the European countries, they take a seat for the Turkish economies and for the trades there. But we have to be careful about the issues that the middle income trap, although it is very good Turkish economy and growing, but since 2007 Turkey has got this middle income trap, tries to get out of this situation. Also, our president, he was prime minister while he was telling that we will celebrate Recep Tayyip Erdogan the 11th anniversary in 2023, has given us $2 trillion domestic income and $25,000 per capita, what he was mentioned. But nowadays, the important thing, the decisions maker with the TTP agreement and the custom union, and they had got the agreement on Wednesday to be in also TTIP via European Union custom union agreement. So here I can say actually the conclusion that Turkey is an emerging market for EU. The benefits of custom union agreement is now from Wednesday, it's going to be much beneficial for Turkey as well. And the TTIP agreement with EU will also include as a custom union member for Turkey inside the getting in this agreement. The accession of Turkey in EU is a big question. Either Turkey is going to have a full membership or a privileged partnership should be decided for Turkey. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. And thanks for keeping the time. So we have 10-15 minutes for discussion. So now I'd like to open yes, and maybe at the beginning I ask about question. Do you have any question for our panelists? Please feel free. Don't worry. You have opportunities to put the question. So, do you have any comments, questions? Yes. So, please.
Thank you for the speakers. My question is for Professor Guralcik.
If you say a little louder.
Okay. My question is for Professor Guralcik. I would like to ask, as we know, in the previous world history, like in the Cold War, we had bipolar system, then we have unipolar system. So, what's the expectation of China about international area? Do they want to be only power, or what will be the balance of power? What's the expectation of China?
Okay, so thanks. More question? Yes, please, Professor.
Well, also a question to China. It's clear that there is a very impressive evolution. But what about inequalities inside the country? Because I was reading months ago a report in a German newspaper saying that inequalities are increasing between the cities at the coast and the inner agricultural parts in the country, and then this can cause also some social problems because now information are flowing, and so in the inner parts of the countries they knew that some parts of the same country are evolving on a different way.
Okay.
Can you tell us something about this?
Okay, so thanks a lot. More questions? Okay, so maybe Professor Guralcik, I will invite you here, so we will answer to questions, and the next round of questions will have.
Concerning the first question, please do not expect immediately Pax Sinica, which I used to say Pax Sinica. China is not ready. However, let me raise one issue. Recently, earlier this year, Harvard University has produced a special research project dealing with the situation like we have currently on the global arena. When you have hegemonic power, a little bit relatively declining, the US, and emerging already pretender, someone who is ready to be much stronger. And the research project qualified 15 cases like that, starting from the year 1500. And in 12 cases out of 15, there was a war. So even this case shows how sensitive moment we have. However, I'm not expecting China to be an immediate hegemonic power due to the second question. Because as someone who is dealing with China for more than, well, sorry to say, about 40 years, I know much better than anyone else how dangerous is in the domestic situation in China. When I go to China now, and I happen to be in China during Tiananmen Square affairs, is Beijing Spring in 1989, so I have the feeling that the situation has repeated itself. You have tremendous domestic challenges. China is not threatened from outside. Even these territorial disputes like Senkaku or South China Sea are not so dangerous as the domestic situation. Number one is corruption, corruption, corruption. In recent Transparency International, China is on position 100, somewhere close to Belize and somewhere Central Africa. So corruption is number one. As you mentioned, Gini coefficient, the best qualifier of differences and wage differences, for China is approaching 0.6. It's much higher than the United States of America, which is the cradle of liberal system and capitalism. So China is trembling like a kettle. It is domestically unstable. And that's the reason they were forced by the situation to the change of the previous development model, expansive development model, and now they are changing it, which is extremely sensitive moment, as we know already from Alexis de Tocqueville. When Gorbachev was trying to save the Soviet Union, he completely destroyed it. And China has the same situation. So my conclusion is following. China is changing, and I can elaborate it, but you need to have another lecture of mine. Another completely new model of development. They are just now introducing it. They are implementing it. If they will be in 5 years' time successful, we will have a challenge, and we will start again a dispute. Is China as a revisionist power? Is China changing the global order? However, first of all, China needs to produce a new model of development and implement it. How they do it, if they will be successful, we will have a new China, and probably another dimension, China reunified, peacefully reunified with Taiwan. Because this is another subject, another issue which is absolutely on the top of mind of Xi Jinping and Chinese leadership. And they are raising the question of great rejuvenation or great renaissance of Chinese nation. And great renaissance should be implemented also for 100 years of Chinese Communist Party. So forced, peaceful reunification with Taiwan. And I have a short definition. People's Republic of China without Taiwan is Communist China, is People's China, is developing country, but People's Republic of China with Taiwan together, combined, is a new, maybe not hegemonic, but definitely new global power. And this is at stake what we have from the Chinese now.
Thanks a lot. So, if you have some more questions, comments, so please. So maybe I will give you, for our panelists, 25 seconds to sum up something.
Shut up!
And later we'll have time for lunch, because Mr. Professor Latomek said that we are not ready with lunch. So 25 minutes to sum up. Professor Guralczyk, to sum up his speech. So, Shantanu, please say 25 minutes to sum up.
Seconds or minutes? Tell us.
25 seconds?
25 seconds.
Okay. Well, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this popular Hollywood movie on Indian Indian outsourcing. It's named Outsourced. There, one actor mentions that India stands for "I shall never do it again." Modi is trying to change that perception, but it would take time, particularly in connection with improving ties with European Union.
Okay, thanks a lot. And Mehmet?
Well, I would say lately that's the most important issue to having Turkey in EU as a member.
Please bring us to the Ottoman Empire. We will collectively we will do it. We will prevail.
Sooner or later.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
And Sergey.
Yes, thank you for your attention. I just would like to say that we have much more information on our website. We have different events we are organizing for doing business between EU and Africa. So you are all welcome to visit our website to have all relevant information. The next year event, EU Africa B2B, will take place in September. The last one was 1 week ago in Belgium. So yes, please feel free to visit us, and then we'll get back to you.
Okay, so thanks a lot. Thanks our panelists, and I hope that during the lunchtime we have more time to discuss not only about emerging markets. So thanks a lot, and see you, and I invite for lunch.
Thank you, Captain.
Thanks.